Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Capacity Building Hub. My name is Emily McLone, and I work as a director of Peaceboat US, an international nonprofit organization working to promote peace and sustainability. And we're here today with some incredible leaders, storytellers, and activists working towards ocean and climate action who are here today to share their incredible stories on how they began their work, and also to encourage you to find your own storytelling power to work for climate action together. So thank you so much for joining us here today. We're going to make this also an interactive discussion, so I hope that you are ready to participate, and we'll be sharing all of our stories one by one here on the stage. So I'd like to also introduce the co-moderator with us, Pravilika, to join me up here on the stage. Please give her a big round of applause.
Thanks, Emily. Hello, everyone. I'm Pravilika. I'm part of the Youth Negotiators Academy. I'm helping them deliver the program. So grateful to be here with Emily today from Peaceboat moderating this session. I'm actually personally very excited because it's Ocean and Land Day. One of my favorite things is ocean. So we actually have 4 panelists from large ocean states representing Climate Youth Negotiator Program, Ocean Hub Africa, and Peaceboat Blue Cradle. And they are here today to share their stories and experiences with all of us. So I'm just going to give a quick introduction of what CYNP is. So CYNP is Climate Youth Negotiator Program. We actually are here today to train, empower, and build strong networks and communities of young negotiators across the globe. We have 55 negotiators from 27 countries here at COP27 negotiating on behalf of their country. So we are super thrilled, and we have 2 people from our negotiator groups. So it's Sivendra from Fiji and John from Vanuatu. Yeah, I'm pretty excited, and I'm also going to introduce Ocean Hub Africa, which is an initiative that is engaged in supporting young innovators and on ocean issues across African subcontinent. And I'm handing over to Emily to talk about Peaceboat.
Thank you very much, Pravilika. So exciting to be here with all these young leaders, because Peaceboat, as an international organization, also encourages young people to come on board with us and share their stories. And one of our partner organizations, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, is how we got to meet Liam as well from New Zealand, who's also going to be sharing with us his short documentary about the work to protect the oceans and conservation. So I'd like to just start by sharing a brief image of our ship, which we'll share here with you. We have been traveling the world as an international organization since 1983. Peaceboat was started by young university students who were looking for ways to build connections across the oceans and build friendships with those that they met in different countries. You'll see here on the right our ship, which holds more than 1,000 people as we travel the world, visiting around 20 countries on every global voyage. And on board the ship, we do a lot of storytelling. We have guest speakers who come from all around the world to share their expertise in various topics, from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, working towards climate action, youth empowerment, human rights, and sustainability as we travel on board the ship. And in each of the ports that we visit, we have cultural exchange and study programs with all of our NGO partners around the world. We also have an Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador program. You'll see here on the left-hand side, this is from the United Nations World Oceans Day, promoting SDG 14 for life below water. And these young people come from small island developing states or large ocean states where they're really on the front lines of ocean degradation and climate change. So we invite them to share their testimonies and stories as they travel the world with us, and then also to meet with experts and UN delegates and government officials as well as they travel to different ports of call. As I mentioned, that we visit around 20 countries during our global voyage. We alternate the routes that we take from a northern hemisphere, sometimes traveling a more central route, also traveling through the Suez Canal here to Egypt and Port Said, and also once a year going on a southern hemisphere route, visiting South Africa and going over to Patagonia and South America. Our storytelling is important to us because we know that without sharing the testimonies of those who come with us on board, we won't be able to learn about the realities in the different countries that we visit. So we encourage everyone on board to share their stories in different ways, through music, art, poetry, spoken word, or films. There's many different ways that we use storytelling on board. So we want to encourage everyone to find their creative power in sharing stories that inspire action and positive movement when we work towards people and the planet. So today I want to start by just sharing a very brief clip of a trailer for a documentary that was made on board called Against the Tide, A Journey for Climate Hope. This was from our Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassador program, and I hope that you'll find this trailer to be very compelling. So go ahead and please roll the clip. Thank you.
I am a change maker,
I am an advocate,
a volunteer,
a storyteller,
a poet, an academic.
a doer.
We are stubborn,
Taking charge, negotiating.
optimistic,
Taking action.
hopeful.
We are rising against the tide.
All right, thank you. Well, this short trailer really is the beginning of a really important story from our Ocean and Climate Youth Ambassadors. And we created a 30-minute documentary to share their stories. And through this documentary, we've helped to reach so many more people. This documentary also won various awards, and the program itself was endorsed by COP23 and launched at the 2017 United Nations Ocean Conference. And so these young people's stories now through this documentary have gone from conference to conference, sharing their testimonies and helping to inspire action, not only from young people, but also from government leaders and all of the stakeholders working towards sustainability and ocean conservation. And one other way that we share our stories is actually through the vessel. So I'd like to also have one more image up on the screen. Our ship, the Peace Boat, travels with the SDGs logo on the hull of the ship. So everywhere we go, we are actually raising awareness for the Sustainable Development Goals. So this is another way that we can share our stories through design. By sailing with the ship, we arrive in port and everyone realizes this is an important ship working towards the SDGs, and with it we bring our stories. But not only that, we believe that to actually share our stories in a way that is more effective, we need to have a more sustainable cruise ship as well. So the vessel itself is a storytelling piece. And our next future voyage will be Peace Boat's Eco Ship, which you can see here on the screen, using solar and wind power to reduce our CO2, and also creating a space where we can actually embody the message of the SDGs, sailing as a flagship for sustainability. And this will be the future of Peace Boat. So we hope to carry many more young people on board and to really bring that message for climate action with all of you together, using our ship as a vessel for storytelling. So thank you very much. This is our short introduction to Peace Boat. Great, and I'd like to invite Pravilika back up to the stage, and we'll begin with our youth storytellers.
So, as Emily mentioned, there are actually many ways to share stories, right? Everyone has their style, their power. So, here we are together with 4 young people from island states who are going to share different aspects of storytelling. And we now have Herlin Servu from Ocean Hub, Africa, to share his storytelling style.
Thank you, Pravatika. Thank you, Emily, for the invitation and the good work that you are doing with Peace Boat. I'm very happy today to share about like a few topics that I enjoy: youth, innovation, because I'm going to talk about innovation as well, and also small island states, because I'm from a small island as well. And storytelling, obviously. And I'm going to use specifically the case of innovators that we worked with. As Pravatika said, I work for Ocean Hub Africa. We are based in South Africa, and what we do, we are a Pan-African business accelerator, focusing only on supporting for-profit startups with a positive impact on the ocean. My name is Erlan, so I'm the operations manager there, and I always say that the only thing that might be as difficult as pronunciating my name is actually finding where I'm from. So I'm from a tiny island called Réunion Island, so I put it in a map there so that all of you remember it. And when it comes to my name, I always say just call me H if Erlan is difficult to say. So coming from a small island and having worked for a long time with lots of small islands, I realized that storytelling is key in our culture. Most of us, we have that little uncle during family gatherings that grab all the children and tell them story about lots of things. And my uncle, there was a specific hero that he was always using. His name was Tijan, Little Jean for people who speaks English. And basically, Tijan was a little boy who was looking like me, I'll just say like this, and who was like doing a lot of bad things. And my uncle or other storytellers were using Tijan in order to teach me when I was a kid on what to do and what not to do. When I was a kid, I did not realize the impact Tijan had on me. Actually, thanks to Tijan, I was not going surfing at sunset or sunrise, so that might probably avoided me getting hit by a shark, because we suffer from shark attacks in my island. I was not talking to strangers that were offering me sweets at night. So Tijan basically like saved my life. And little did I know, when I started to work with Ocean Hub Africa, that there was innovators that were leveraging storytelling in order to get youth some climate, to make youth become some climate activists, leveraging on behavior change sciences, etc. And basically, it's important to do it like when you are a kid, because the older you get, the more difficult it is for you to change your behaviors, just because like you are just stuck in all the principles that you think that you know. So I'm going to talk about Captain Fan Plastic, who is one of our innovators. He's the hero that our innovator is using in order to lead children to become like more part of the solution when it comes to plastic action, and to make them understand that they should treat plastic as a treasure and not trash. So basically, the motto of Captain Fan Plastic is that like cleanup is nice, but it would be even better if we can use the power of stories so that like people, they change their behavior and into how we manage plastic from a very young age. So Captain Fan Plastic basically work with people from the age of 8 to 11 years old. So they go to schools and they tell a story of Captain Fan Plastic that I will tell you about. It's basically a pirate who, traveling the world, figured out like they were like plastic affecting marine life, and decided to change the way that he was seeing plastic and to make useful things out of this plastic. And so basically, Captain Fan Plastic, they use the storytelling part to raise awareness with children about that, and also to make them activists by using simple words and also big gestures to make the children understand some key concept when it comes to plastic pollution, about the effect on marine species, about also the 5 R's that I'm going to talk about. And then, in order to get them to see plastic more as a treasure and not trash, they also organize a workshop, an innovation workshop, where they use plastics to make useful things. And at the end of their program, what they do, they take children in a space, can be a beach, etc. They give them and they organize a treasure hunt. So they make all the children walk through the beach and to say what they found while doing their treasure hunt. So in the concept of Captain Pan Plastic, storytelling is key. So this is why the storytellers themselves, they are dressed as pirates, actually. And they always use massive gestures. For instance, if we were in a session of Captain Pan Plastic right now, and we wanted to say, to tell the children that, yeah, when you will be a grown-up, in 2015, actually there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. So we tell them that means that if you go to the restaurant, you want to order fish, people will tell you, no, mister, we don't have fish, we have just plastic to serve you. So it's this type of comparisons and also some big gestures that they use to make children understand what will be the effect of plastic pollution if ever we continue to use plastic this way. And the model of Captain Pan Plastic is very scalable, actually, and most particularly to small island developing states. For instance, the program that they are implemented started in South Africa, but it's being scaled essentially in small island developing states. Madagascar is not a small island, but it's an island state. Seychelles, Maldives, Mauritius, Cape Verde, and Sao Tome and Principe. So, and the principle is to get in a funny way to get those children to understand the importance of the 5 R: refuse, reduce, reuse, and repurpose and recycle. And actually, they use these 5 R like a battle cry. It's like they ask people, yeah, let's fight for the 5 R. If you are a Captain Pan Plastic, say ha. And all the children actually, they follow, and so they get into the game, and they become very true activists through that. But obviously, even though it's a scalable model, the model must be adjusted to the reality of the small island developing states we're talking about, because even though we have the same challenges, we also have some key specificities that if we don't adjust them to the story that we are telling, children will not understand and they will not identify themselves in the story. So this is why, first off, one of the things that Captain Pan Plastic does, they translate the story that they are telling in the languages that they are delivering the story or the program, but this is common sense. But they go even further than that. They adjust also the name of the characters that they are using, so that it becomes more of a reference to this culture to another culture. For instance, Captain Pan Plastic is called Captain Jack in South Africa, but it's called Captain Jaco in Mauritius, and Captain Pan Plastic is called Said in Comoros. So they make sure that they adjust the story like this. And they also make sure that the character and the type of species that is used is also relevant to the story where the program is being implemented. For instance, in South Africa, Steve the seagull is a seagull, but Steve takes the shape of local birds in other countries, so that it makes it relevant to the children. So this is a program specifically about like plastic action, but I also wanted to say like leveraging on storytelling and like doing it in a fun way for children can also be applied to other type of ocean climate action. They are starting to, in South Africa, for instance, there are lots of children that they don't understand the ocean. They don't go to the ocean. They are even afraid of the ocean because they can't swim. So in order to reconcile them with the ocean, they also have they are starting a new program where they build some kind of gears that still with plastic pollution that allows them to go underwater and see what's happening underwater. And also, they also leading a new program to drive black female inclusion when it comes to everything related to the ocean. We have on one side of the picture a very dear friend of mine that we call her the Black Mermaid. She is actually the first black free diver in the world. Actually, she's being recognized for that. And she just concluded a partnership with Captain Pan Plastic in order to tell the story for young black ladies to understand how important is it like to be closer to the ocean and to make sure to protect the ocean as well. So, I mean, like, this is only what I wanted to say about Captain Pan Plastic. More than happy to answer your questions about like other things that we do at Ocean Hub Africa, or even as regards as Captain Pan Plastic. These are the contacts of the people from Captain Pan Plastic, but if anything, don't hesitate to come and talk to me afterwards, and I'll be more than happy to tell you a bit more.
Thank you so much, Herlin, for your fun, super interactive insights. So now we open the floor to Sivendra, a negotiator from Fiji, who will share how storytelling is actually important for negotiations.
Thank you, Prav and Emily, for the opportunity to be part of this panel. To start off, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Sivendra Michael. I'm actually with a negotiator for the adaptation track for the Fiji government. And I actually am a proud Pacific climate warrior and a father of an 8-year-old daughter. And to start off this discussion, I would like to read a poem that she wrote. She's 8 years old, so you can understand that she'll string sentences about this topic and how it's related to the Moana. So as I said, I'm a proud Pacific climate warrior, which is one of the groups that I'm part of. She says, "My family is important, our food is good, our culture matters, the ocean is our home. That is our home. Our islands are not sinking, we are fighting." So that's actually a connection of an 8-year-old and her understanding to the ocean. And I feel that coming into this space over the years, many of us Pacific Islanders, we recognize that we come from large ocean states and the ocean is our home. The terminology, how many in the room have watched the movie Moana? Exactly. So although Moana originates from a Hawaiian story, it actually is very grounding to the way people in the Pacific actually refer to the ocean, because it is our provider for food and our livelihoods. And if you would recall, the stories and the myths that we have been told from generation to generation is how we have voyaged from one place to another to get to the Pacific. So our origins come not only from Africa, but also from other parts of the world. So I am a person of mixed ethnicity. My mother is family, she's the 5th generation Indian. She was brought in by the British as the correct word, slaves, to work in Fiji. So they voyaged many seas to get to Fiji. Similarly, for my dad's side of the family, they have voyaged to get to a land which they originate from and which they identify as home. So in growing up, what we have come to talk about more often is how can we protect our moana, which is our provider, and how can we bring the power of storytelling into policy and decision-making spaces. So with the Pacific Climate Warriors, one thing that really grounds the work that we do is our advocacy campaigns. So if you have time, I would encourage you to YouTube some of the videos that we are doing, advocacy materials that are coming out. One of those advocacy materials, there's a Marshallese poet by the name Kathy. She's also a negotiator for the RMI government, Republic of Marshall Islands. And she talks about rise between the North Pacific and also the Northern Antarctic. So, and they are two people fighting for the same cause and are able to link their stories. And how we come into spaces is we bring these stories to the decision-making tables, and we remind our leaders that when they are negotiating, they're negotiating lives of people, and they're also forgetting that back home the situation is different. At your backyard, you should always look at the kinds of things that we are being affected by, and maybe help others understand the urgency of this matter. So, for example, last 2019-20, before COVID, we launched a campaign called Matangi Malohi, which was about strong winds, strong people. And what we did is we came out on streets on the Global Day for Climate Action in the month of September, and we demonstrated through, not through a like violent protest, but through a peaceful protest of what we want in the policy space, what we call for. So we took on these stories from the climate impacts moving into climate mobility. So from 2019 to today, we just launched another product, which is a digital storyboard called Frontline Truths. These are stories of Pacific communities that rely heavily on on the coast and the ocean for survival, and how their stories are now becoming from a story of impact to a story of forced relocation. So then, going on from that, we have also, with the Pacific Climate Warriors, drafted a declaration called the Kiowa Climate Emergency Declaration. This declaration is then, again, was formulated in the Alofi, which is the connection between land and water, in the island of Kiowa, which was displaced, which has resettled community of Tuvaluan nationalities for 75 years. So from Tuvalu, moving into a community in Fiji, living in Fiji for the last 75 years. This year marks their 75th year. And we went to the community to try and draft the declaration. What did we do with the declaration? We presented the declaration to our leaders, and we told them that these are the Pacific demands. This is why we travel tens and thousands of miles to get to Egypt, and we know we have to be here to mobilize the language in that declaration in the negotiation room. So I'm a product of that. I was honored and blessed to be part of the drafting committee for the declaration, and now I have the opportunity to be in that room to try and mobilize the text into the negotiation space. And how do I do that? Is that every time I lift up the card of the Pacific, I call on leaders to recognize the urgency of the climate crisis and to ground ourselves with the reality of small island states that they are facing, and there is no time to waste. Of course, we cannot start telling stories in the negotiation room, but we can refer them to the declaration that is formulated through the process of storytelling. So it's not this academic jargons and this UNFCCC language that's in the text of the declaration. It's really focused on people's stories. It's centered around people's lived realities. So bringing that into a space like policy is very, very powerful. And lastly, I would like to close also with a poem that was written from the Matangi Malohi about storytelling. It is authored by our managing 350 Global Director for regions, and he was previously the 350 Pacific Managing Director. So, I'll just read the last part. You are Matangi Malohi, strong winds, seeking frontline truths in the transcendent Talanoa of knowledge. Talanoa is a conversation and how we intergenerationally pass on knowledge. Masculine culture, feminine consciousness, woven together, lost together. Why? Donu. You are Matongi Malohi, strong winds from the four pillars of our Fale. The same ancestors that you are calling to believe will also call you to unbelief. So your faith can take a new form. So you can return to the source and be reminded of the commonality of our plurality. You are Matangi Malohi, strong winds, listening, nourishing, transforming. We are stewards of gifts from our old people. Nongu wasa wasa, era savura, era savura, era savura. My ocean, they have emerged. Vinaka.
Thank you so much. That was really beautiful. And I've just been really inspired with this. First of all, the Youth Negotiators program, everybody, is incredible. Last night also we heard from many of the young people in an evening celebration sharing how much it's impacted their lives. And I just really want to say that that storytelling, bringing young people to the forefront and having them be there in the negotiations is so important. So I just really want to say thank you so much for being here and for all the hard work that goes into that storytelling and negotiating here at COP. So we really appreciate all of our island leaders. And we actually are going to be traveling from island to island here. So we're going from Fiji. If the partners in the back, we actually have some background slides, so maybe they can put onto the screen for us. But we'll be going from the islands of Fiji, and then going to Vanuatu, and then to New Zealand. So traveling from the islands through the ocean. We've got so much of the connection as the ocean is one space connecting us all together, but it also connects stories, as we just heard, from people that voyage to get to each place, and the stories that you can see and these beautiful blue and green planet that we live on. So thank you very much, Dr. Suvendra. And next I'd like to pass the microphone to John Rubin, who is a youth negotiator from the island of Vanuatu, a research associate at the Pacific Center for Environment and Sustainable Development. Everybody please give John a big round of applause.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for this great opportunity. Yeah, thank you for this great opportunity to be part of this evening panel. As you can, it is an honor to be part of this year's COP meeting. As Suvendra has mentioned, we have traveled miles to get here. It's because we are one of the most vulnerable people of the world to the adverse impact of climate change. So it is an honor to be part of this year's COP, and I must acknowledge the CYNB program for making it possible for me as a youth negotiator from my country, Vanuatu, to be part of this year's COP meeting. If you don't know Vanuatu is just 500 kilometers west of Fiji. So that's where Vanuatu is. And as I've mentioned, we are listed as one of the most vulnerable nations in the world to the adverse impacts of climate change. And you name it, we are prone to extreme tropical cyclone events, long dry periods, floodings. Not only climate extreme events, we also prone to geological hazards. We have 6 active volcanoes in our islands. So worrying about climate extreme events, we also have to worry about geological hazards. So my talk this evening will be, I don't have any slides. I'll just share my experience on what I've been doing back home as I work for the Vanuatu Meteorological Services, and our role is to provide a timely and reliable climate and geological early warning information to our people. So as a young climate scientist, It is a great opportunity to be part of the meteorological services for my country, to provide timely and accurate information to our people. And part of our work is to provide to conduct awareness program, climate change awareness program to the community. And we do climate change science programs. When we talk about climate change, most of the time we tend to focus on adaptation and mitigation measures, how we educate our people to adapt and mitigate. But then we forget to educate our people on the science behind the changing climate condition. So as part of our work at the Meteorological Service, we provide scientific, we try to tailor scientific information down to our local dialogue so that our local people at the community level understand. So as part of this program, we provide special climate science training to some of our focal points at the community level. The chiefs, church leaders, youth representatives. So we educate them. We try to simplify technical and scientific climate aspects down to the level that they can communicate to their people. So that's one of our main program that we are doing at the National Met Service that I am very fortunate to be part of. And we as a young Nivan, I have experienced 5 Category 5 cyclone. And in 2015, we experienced a very severe tropical cyclone, which is a tropical cyclone Pam, which is a Category 5 cyclone. And just 5 years after, we experienced another severe tropical cyclone, which is also a Category 5, TC Harold, that strikes our islands, and it hits our island hardest. And I am very, I don't know, a lot of young people around the world did not go through this experience. And our young people and children will continue to experience severe tropical cyclones that can reach Category 5 if we don't have concrete actions in this COP meeting. So I'll just stop here. If I have anything else, then I'll share with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John, for sharing your story from Vanuatu and the importance of storytelling and testimony sharing, I think, from island nations. Really appreciate your work, also as a negotiator here on behalf of all the island nations. And next, I would like to pass the microphone over to Liam Kokua from Aotearoa. And the Cook Islands is where he's also from, so he's going to be representing a few different communities here with us from island nations. He's a trustee from the Blue Cradle Foundation. This is also part of our network with the Sustainable Ocean Alliance. And he's a filmmaker and representative of SOA in their Pacific Hub. So he's got quite an interesting story and also a short film to share with us this evening. So everybody please give Liam a big welcome.
Kia rana tātou katoa. My name's Liam Kokoua. Thank you, Emily, and all my colleagues here. I guess I'm just going to follow a little bit of a wiggly journey here, but I'm going to try and weave in some storytelling aspects into my introduction. Firstly, yes, I am, I guess, representing Aotearoa because I am a member of Blue Cradle, and we are currently here. I'm here at COP to talk about this issue of deep sea mining, which will show the documentary soon. And I guess thank you also for calling it Aotearoa, because I think naming is quite important. The name Aotearoa is the indigenous name for New Zealand. It means the long white cloud, and the meaning behind it is when the first discoverer of Aotearoa, his name was Kupe, arrived from the Pacific. His wife, who was on board, actually saw a long white cloud which was sitting above the landmass, which often when you're voyaging you see clouds above significant land masses. So she said, oh look, a long white cloud, and that became the name Aotearoa. So that's a connection we had when my ancestors left what we call Hawaii, or the sort of South Pacific area, and came to Aotearoa to settle the islands where I now call home. But as Emily mentioned, my family is from Avaiki Nui, also known as the Cook Islands. And again, with the name Avaiki Nui is not officially recognized, but it's a name that I'm currently involved in trying to integrate this into our people's understandings. As we need indigenous names to refer to ourselves. Even our 15 islands, which is a colonial construct, some of these islands had varying levels of interaction with each other, but we had just as many levels of interaction with some of our neighboring countries in French Polynesia and even in Samoa. So I think the naming of our islands, the Cook Islands is actually after a person called James Cook. If you know about him, he was a British explorer who went around documenting what he saw around the islands, and basically claiming or discovering these islands for England, for the monarchy. So for us to carry that name Cook Islands today, I feel is very detrimental to our indigenous understanding of what it means to be from a large ocean state, and also from Te Moana Nui o Kiva, the great ocean of blue, which is the Pacific Islands. Again, the Pacific Islands was a name given to us by the Spanish explorers, and it means the calm ocean. And anyone who's from the Pacific, as my friend here was talking about, knows that it can be anything but calm. It also suggests that our people are calm and that we're not ready to stand up for things that matter to us. So I think all these names that I'm talking about now are very important, and it's something that I integrate into my storytelling back in Aotearoa and also in the Cook Islands. I've been recently submitting educational stories, I guess, around what is actually the historical significance of our names, for example, the Cook Islands, and why should we look at using an indigenous name. And Avaiki Nui for the Cook Islands is a name that I feel reflects us. Avaiki means a physical homeland. It can also mean the spiritual homeland where we go when our people pass away. But Avaiki, or its linguistic cognates, Hawaii, Savaii, Hawaii, are islands that are actually found all across Polynesia. So when we talk about Avaiki, it's a name that, while the Cook Islands is a modern concept, it's a name that talks about the expansiveness. Nui means expansive, large, vast. So Avaiki Nui to me is a great name for our nation, which is a large ocean state, first and foremost. 240 square kilometers of land, 2 million square kilometers of ocean. So anyway, about that, talking about storytelling is quite new to me. I didn't have I'm not a filmmaker by trade. I was an academic, and I love to research, and I did a master's on traditional resource management practices in Rarotonga, the island where my family are from. But I realized that no one's really going to read my reports about in-depth resource management practices that a lot of people in our islands don't actually practice anymore, because it was recorded 200 years ago. So I've been trying to use storytelling, whether it's writing or whether it's short documentaries. So I've only done 2 short documentaries so far, but to tell stories about how our indigenous knowledge has been lost, but also try and revitalize that amongst our communities in the Vaiki Nui. And one was about the connection, or the loss of connection our people have with our mountains, so more about the land. But this recent one I've done with Blue Cradle, and supported by Sustainable Ocean Alliance is about the issue of deep sea mining in Te Moana Nui o Kiva, the Pacific. And the thing about deep sea mining is that it's an issue that will be affecting all of us here that inhabit the Pacific. It is also interwoven into the problem of climate change, because the current interest in mining the manganese nodules that sit within the Cook Islands EEZ, and we seem to be sort of fortunate or unfortunate that the majority of these manganese nodules actually, in terms of those that are found within national waters, are actually within the Cook Islands of Waikiki EEZ. So this is an issue that I feel like needs a regional approach, but because of colonization and the fact that we are self-governing and are able to manage the resources in our EEZ without input from anybody else, is actually a concern. Our government's currently talking about we need to seabed mine to assist the world in this global transition into electric vehicles, but not really considering what will be the impacts on the deep sea and these ecosystems, which are 5 to 6 kilometers below the surface of the ocean, which we do actually know nothing about. So it's a huge concern, and I think that it's something that we need to be able to unify with our Pacific Oceanian neighbors, and not really allow one government to carry out this work. And unfortunately, colonization has affected my islands quite significantly. So we are predominantly indigenous, but we have been disconnected from our environment. We have some people that fish and plant, but that traditional spirituality where we saw nature as atua, which are basically personified elements, we would call them by pronouns he, she, they. We would treat them like their mother. They're actually, in a lot of cases, considered ancestors. We don't really practice that in the Cook Islands. Christianity basically thoroughly wiped it out. So it's something that I'm also trying to weave into my storytelling. So you'll see this in the documentary that I'm about to show. I think I better end it there. Thank you, and enjoy the short. It's the short version, so we have an 11-minute full version available on YouTube. It's called Moana Irako. Thanks.
E kāpiki ana tātou I te takere o te moana ko te moana I rākau. Kua ki te tātou I tea, nā roto mai I tō tātou au atua, no ana ki reira. Ko te turuturu mai ana I tō tātou waraanga, mei mua tangana mai.
I think atua were devised by our tupuna to be able to relate to their environment, to be able to personify the elements and the landforms, giving a face or a name to each of these important natural events.
They're not just places that we should go and take for money and take for dollars. It has to be more than that. These things need to be able to revitalize and to rejuvenate.
We see mining as a threat to our existence as indigenous people of this place. We are seeing all of these things around us, our environment, our culture, our language, deteriorating.
They're not thinking about you. They're not thinking about our communities. They're not thinking about the environment. What they're thinking about is money.
It will affect our climate, our planet, in a way that will never be repairable. So there's only one thing we should be doing now, which is to call on the world to ban seabed mining once and for all.
It just has this wasteful culture that society around the world is getting into, and it's not doing our world any good whatsoever.
The deep sea is such an important place for our Cook Islands Māori people. I believe the presence of the atua on the deep sea shows us that this area was tapu to our ancestors.
By recognizing that this ocean doesn't have her own voice, then perhaps we could consider giving her one through our own cultural lens and also legally enforced. So what are we doing about it? What are you doing about it?
Well, thank you very much, Liam, for that really powerful short film. And it's so true. The deep seabed mining is such a serious issue at this time. And it's hard to imagine for people who are not living in island nations or not so close to ocean or who are not diving and seeing the animals below the sea. So it's really important that we capture that footage and can share that story with others. So thank you so much for working on that campaign together with Sustainable Ocean Alliance. It's great. And I just want to mention that because we have youth negotiators here with us today, they also have a lot of work to do at the table this afternoon. So we want to quickly open up for a little bit of Q&A to make sure that we have a chance to have all of you speak with them just before they need to go back to the negotiating table. And this will be a kind of a two-part series, so we will have a bit of Q&A here, and then we're going to actually open up to do some interactive dialogue with everybody here in the audience. We would like to hear your voices and your stories as well. So if you have some things that you'd like to share, we'll be doing that in the second part of this workshop and presentation today. So if you have a question for any of our incredible and inspiring storytellers here on the stage, please raise your hand and we'll bring the mic around to you. I see 2 questions here on the left. Thank you. If you can also please start with your name and where you're from, and then we can also then say the question. We just might need one more mic from the back. Great, thank you so much. And since we are live streaming today, maybe we can ask our friends to come up to the podium and you can ask the question here from the stage. That's also welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your talk. It was very inspiring for me. I'm Loris Hamero from Manila Observatory in the Philippines. So I'm a sea level rise scientist, and I also come from a small island community. I think for the past almost 10 years, I have been doing my best to fight off the narrative of sinking islands because it's very, very harmful, I think, even for our communities. I was just wondering whether you share the same challenge, and is it different, in the negotiating room, or is that narrative still prevalent, and how are you trying to fight it off? Thank you.
We'll take the other questions and then we'll respond one.
Okay, great. He'd like to take one more question, and then we'll take the next answers from the stage. I think there was one here on the left.
Hi, my name is Jordan, and I'm from Key West, Florida. It's a little island, the southernmost part of the United States. And I was just wondering, how do you recommend to get your people in agreement with policymakers if the policymakers are actually the ones who want to expand the protected areas or do more about climate change and stuff? Because where I'm from, it's actually the citizens that are more resilient to the ideas than the policymakers.
Great question. Dr. Sivendra, you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I'll start with the first one. So I think we share the same sentiments. We don't, like I said, the slogan for Pacific Climate Warriors is we are not drowning, we are fighting. And sinking is conceptually understood as more differently than drowning. It's got 2 different understandings as well, because drowning in the context of us can be in terms of flood, rising sea levels and so forth, so it's different. We do share that sentiments, but in the negotiation room, I'm afraid to say that this narrative is not shared at all. So we are discussing, say for example, like adaptation goals and indicators and how do you report on them. Loss and damage, we talk about non-economic loss and damage, like why are we fighting for a funding facility? Because we are constantly saying that, by far the vulnerable countries need a larger access to finance because of the non-economic cost of climate-related events or the impacts of climate change. But I have never heard, personally, this is my 5th COP, I've never heard someone say that our small islands are sinking. They don't use that. it also, in my understanding, going to be a little bit academic and nerdy here, but it gives a deficit kind of understanding. So we are always going to our strengths-based approach, right? So we're not victims. We don't play the victim card. We are playing the card that we are survivors, and we are going to constantly build on that. In terms of the second question, in terms of policy spaces, there is two sides of this discussion as well. I think with the Talanoa process or the storytelling that we have been talking about, when it does not translate into policy and things that our leaders want, then we used other forms of advocacy, like soft forms of advocacy through like drafting a submission against the policy or showing up at consultations to try and lobby against things, against the idea or propositions, because there is this intergenerational dialogue that does not take place between policymakers and the communities. So to bridge that gap, we show up in spaces or we do written submissions. That's in the case of us. And maybe different for other countries.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to comment on those questions? Okay. All right, thank you. Do we have any more questions from the audience? I also realize we're so close to the end of this session today, so we might have to take some of our storytelling to the outside space afterwards. We can make some group circles there and share a little bit more to continue this conversation. I'd like to take maybe one more question from the audience, if anybody would like to raise their hand and ask any questions to the panel. I know we have some great storytellers in the audience. Daniel Cervenka, who is also a filmmaker and storyteller. There's a microphone there for you. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing those stories and those experiences. I wanted to get your perspectives on whether you, as in some occasions or instances of filmmakers as well, do you see filmmaking as an opportunity or a good tool to creating bridges between policymakers and public? As that's a practice that I've been trying to kind of use through the work that we do. Because in a lot of situations you don't get that opportunity for direct dialogue, but as a mediator, as an artist, as a creative, as a storyteller, you can create that space and actually at least put those perspectives side by side. So I just wanted to hear from yourselves if you also see it as a potential tool to do that, to create that space for dialogue. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. So for example, the mountain documentary I worked on, one of the main goals, I guess, it was actually inspired by what was happening in Hawaii with the Mauna Kea issues with, the science, well, the universities wanting to place a giant telescope on the top of a sacred mountain. It's to sort of protect the sacred, science versus indigenous rights situation. And I thought, well, rather than wait for the similar situation to happen in Rarotonga, why don't I start to document what our traditional connection with mountains is? And one of the main goals of it was to influence stronger protection of the mountains in terms of how people should be acting when they go up there, interweaving those traditional elements, but actually saying, to tourists, like this is what the Cook Islands government would like, or this is what, Ministry of Culture endorses this, like let's, just create some generic like mountain guidelines, and let's actually create the policy and around our land laws to say, look, like we are not going to allow urban sprawl above 100 meters or something like that. So I'm still hoping it's not online yet. I'm going to take it back for a launch in Rarotonga, but I'll take it also to our ministry and say, look, can we get behind this and say, let's like get some actual protection for mountain ecosystems so that we don't end up clearing it, or we never have a Mauna Kea situation. And also with this, I mean, it's a very difficult situation with the seabed mining because, my Prime Minister's been walking around making comments saying that, this is what we need to do to get to 1.5, but the thing is we're trying to solve a problem caused by exploitation with another by creating another exploitation problem. So it's gonna, we're trying to solve the impacts from the first exploitation problem, or what's going to be the next one when it's something that's much more hard to understand in deep sea ecosystems, and it could have huge cascading effects. And so that's hard. I hope that, generally by swaying and by educating more of our populace, our grassroots communities, that we can sort of have a trickle-up effect, and eventually, when our government is, feeling very isolated from their community, then they will realise that this is not something that we should be pursuing. So, I hope that it can achieve those goals through storytelling. Thanks.
Yeah, and maybe just to add, like Liam and Daniel, I think that the storytelling through filmmaking is such a powerful tool because it's grounded on realities. And of course, these are the realities that are missed. And the problem, however, for the Global South is the reach of this content. So you can make amazing television productions and short skits, short movies, but it doesn't reach like platforms where it should reach. And so for us in the Pacific, right now there is, where the movies are made, people live in the rural areas, they are not able to access them. We're talking about our own country context, right? So the alternative is to do storybooks for children and teachers, to use this storybook into the schooling system. So as an educator advocacy tool, it's amazing, and it also helps people that are not experiencing climate change to ground themselves with the realities that they are. So my call to both you, Liam and Daniel, is to not stop, do not ever stop doing this, because this really means a lot for us. And it's one way of getting the frontline truths out there of very vulnerable communities, of very sensitive topics that are less discussed in open spaces. So the moment you stop, it also means that we have less of a platform to take these stories out. And so, I call on all artivists in the room to use any form of art. I read a poem to you that is originated by people of the Pacific. This is because we resonate with art. And these are our main forms of advocacy, and it's growing, and it needs to find its own platform, even in the negotiation rooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Well, that's the closing here of our session this afternoon. We want to give one more big round of applause for all of our storytellers on stage. Thank you very much. And we have some homework for all of you who are here in the audience, too.
Maybe if you could find a friend in the room and then share what your form of storytelling is and why you think it's important. So maybe find a friend next to you and then share one of your favorite forms of storytelling. And thank you so much for all the panelists here and the audience to have this amazing interactive conversation. And I think it's very important, especially on this Ocean and Land Day, to be talking about the ocean and the ocean warriors here. So thank you.
And thank you very much to the Capacity Building Hub for hosting us this afternoon. Thank you very much for all the coordination. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon.